can do the business and make a profit. So, the government does the policies, the regulations, and enforcement, and we do the business. What has been happening though is that we have been doing business and we have been complaining about practically everything. The ministry is in Entebbe, unlike most ministries. So you go there and by the time you get there after that traffic jam, you're already in a bad mood. So even if they are, let's say you get there and the commissioner is not there, oh my God, that is the end of the world. Now, we want to end all that. At the end of the day, as I've said, what we would like to have is a setup where we have a team of people spearheading every value chain. Then at the opportune moment, we shall have another meeting which brings together all those value chains, which value chains will be the ones working with the ministry. So when it comes, for example, to budgeting, or when and if they are working on a new bill, a new policy or whatever, we don't want to just hear rumors. We want them to know where we are so that they can call us even at short notice, because once we have our value chains in this day and age of WhatsApp, we can even be called at short notice to say there's this emergency, how do we handle it? So, once again, I want to thank you for coming. I want to say that this is, it's like there's a new baby born. Normally when we get new babies in Uganda, every baby is cute. So let us treat our new baby as cute. Let us be ready to raise this baby, but let us be ready to work together. Whatever has not been going well, let us put that in the past. But whatever gap, don't feel constrained to say what is your problem just because it looks a bit like a chicken, but it is not a chicken. If you are pigs and the pigs are having a problem, come out with your pig's problem, because otherwise Madam Juliet will not be able to handle your issue unless it is clear. And that is why when it comes to breaking into groups, we shall be going into those groups where we can talk about our special programs, like the beef and so on and so forth. With those few words, it is my pleasure to welcome you again, but to invite our Commissioner, Dr. Juliet Sentumwe, and also Acting Director, Animal Industry from the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries. Madam Juliet, please.
Of life, for such a nice day today, and for enabling us all to be here today. Lord, we pray that you hasten the steps of those who are yet to join us, so that we deliberate on this important sector in the country. Lord, we call on you to preside over this meeting, guide our words, thoughts, and actions, so that eventually we come up with a direction that will give glory to this country and finally glory to your kingdom. Lord, we thank you because we believe you've heard our prayer. Amen. We have also been requested that in the meetings that we attend, we always have to impress upon people to remember the national anthem. It is our responsibility. Can somebody lead us in that anthem? And eventually, you'll have to learn the East African one also. Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hands. United, free, for liberty, together we'll always stand. Okay. And make sure your children also learn it. What has happened? This? Did I tell? Okay. My name has already been said and it's there. I'm substantively the Commissioner for Animal Production and Acting Director for Animal Resources. I want to start by saying good morning to you all. And I must say that I'm very glad that you responded to the invitation for this meeting. And we are hoping that you are going to respond even further to the subsequent engagements that we are proposing may have to happen. Yesterday we had a very fruitful meeting with the leaders who are investing in the animal industry. And today we are making it a wider consultation with other stakeholders in this industry. And we are hoping that we will be able to add to the deliberations we had yesterday. So I want to call on you to be very open and free, informal discussion, no protocol, maybe when the minister comes in. But for now, feel free to engage as you deem fit. Nobody has a monopoly of knowledge in this industry. I believe all of us, we are learners and we continue learning. So don't think any of us is the ultimate expert. So feel free to raise your question and give your suggestions, as long as they add value to the discussion. I just want to give you a brief presentation on where we are strategically focusing as a ministry or as public sector, and highlight on a few areas that we think we can engage with you in terms of investment to propel the sector forward. Some facts that I want us to remember. I think you all will appreciate that livestock make a major, although largely underestimated, contribution to rural development in most of our developing countries. They produce food, enhance crop production, and provide additional economic goods and services as well as cash income. The inclusion of livestock diversifies and increases total farm production and income, and provides year-round employment, and also disperses risk, because we know agricultural enterprises naturally have risks. We also appreciate that sales of livestock products provide funds for even purchasing now the crop inputs and for financing other farm investments. Livestock often form the major capital reserve of farming households. As you know, when you need school fees, when somebody's sick, many times we actually resort to livestock. And they also enhance the economic viability and sustainability of a farming system. However, I wish to note that much as we have noted all those facts, increasingly, development partners are hesitant to invest or provide money to our sector because of other attendant challenges that are typical of the industry. We are turning, for example, too much towards the intensification of livestock production, and this may cause pollution. When we increasingly keep, for example, the ruminants, they are associated with degrading the lands we are working with. Some even think that livestock favor the well-to-do segment of society. For example, the cattle. Cattle are not owned by poor, in quotes, people. So sometimes people have that notion that maybe this is for the well-to-do. And of course they compete with humans in terms of, for example, the brains that they have to feed in. But despite all these challenges, we also appreciate that animal production systems also offer great opportunities for development, and hence the reason for our being here today.
So we look at those opportunities that we can harness to grow the industry. Agriculture currently is growing at that rate, 6%, and livestock is growing at 2%. When you look at here. Agriculture support services are growing at 4%, exports at 5.7%, and the livestock exports, in comparison, they are growing at 1%. Livestock production is a major component of the Uganda's economy, and it greatly contributes to the livelihoods of many farming households. We also know that about 60% of the rural households in Uganda derive their livelihoods from livestock. In fact, there is evidence that families that are keeping livestock in addition to having crops, many times they are more resistant to conditions. They survive better, for example, in conditions of drought, because they can easily resort to the livestock they keep. They sell them and get the other services they may want. Currently, livestock is contributing to about 4.3% to the GDP and 17% to the agricultural GDP. But as I earlier said, we believe that this is quite underestimated. There are contributions like the manure we get from these animals that we put into the gardens to raise the crops that are never considered in the calculations when they are considering livestock contribution to the GDP. So we have a responsibility to make sure that we improve on the way that contribution is calculated. The demand for animal products is projected to increase by about 70% between now and 2050 in the developing countries, including Uganda, because we anticipate that the population will double. Those are the current figures as we have for the different livestock, but I want you to note these are projections as per the livestock census we did in 2008. We normally do censuses every 10 years, and we are preparing to do another one because 10 years have passed since then. So these are projections based on growth rates for those different stock. You can note there, about 14 for cattle, 16 for goats, about 4 for sheep, and 4.1 for pigs. And that table tries to compare current production levels of the different products we are talking about and the projections we are looking at by 2020. So it gives you an indication of how fast we may have to work if we are going to attain those levels. We have prospects or hope that because of those three elements, increasing population, urbanization, and increased incomes, certainly there will be opportunities for us to increase production in the animal industry, because there will be people to consume, and as people move to urban areas, they tend to consume more of these animal-based products. But there is also evidence that the animal products, people get purchasing power as incomes increase, and when they get more power, they tend to consume more of animal products than the crops. So there is hope for our production. But although we have that hope and prospects for increasing or propelling our industry, we have challenges which we have to surmount before we get there. Generally, one of the challenges we have is a weak public sector investment. Currently, I think you are all aware that the agriculture sector gets we've been oscillating between 2.5 and 3.5% of the total national budget. And yet, the minimum we would have expected is at least 10% as per the declaration made by AU in Maputo. So we are yet to get there, and if agriculture gets to around 2.5 to 3.5, then that means that livestock is even getting much less. We have ineffective support services, many of the cases. For example, if you want to produce and there is no water available, just as Madam Victoria has just indicated, or electricity, for example, it's not available in a production area where you want to process, that's a challenge. Programs and projects are often poorly designed and inadequately targeted. So this leads to inefficient and fragmented allocation of the scarce development resources. You find in some of these areas, for example, like 6 projects working on about the same thing, doing exactly about the same thing in the same region. And you wonder why they could not get together to use those resources more equitably. So that is a big challenge we note, and we have to rethink it. Policies related to the livestock sector are often incoherent, with ill-defined goals and with little or no assessment of their likely impact. We have many policies, laws in place, but sometimes they are not so clear on where we want to go, and when they are there, they may not be well implemented. And specifically to come to Uganda, there are challenges that we need to address. One of the major hindrances to animal production and productivity and global trade, food safety and security is the occurrence of diseases. Costs of preventing the diseases, costs of controlling and treatment the animals when they get sick. I think that one I don't need to elaborate. For all of you who are in the animal industry, you know what this has caused us. And getting back to what I told you, that we have very limited funding, sometimes to the tune of having maybe funds to purchase like only 2% of our requirements, for example, of the vaccines we require. So you can imagine what that means. We have challenges in value addition due to the poor standards, due to poor certification methods. You don't simply get things across the borders. For example, for export, if they are not well certified, and inadequate infrastructure, say, for processing. And that means that eventually all our products fetch low prices on the market. And standards begin on farm. So don't imagine that you've produced a poor product from the farm and you salvage it at processing level. It does not happen like that. So right from the producer, you have to watch out on the standards. Garbage in, garbage out. Inadequate market information is another challenge. You've had incidences where people produce and after having the harvest, they have no market for it. So we need to start producing for specific markets. Awareness creation. I was indicating we have laws, we have guidelines on many things, and laws that many of you may not know about. So we still have a challenge. We need people to know and possibly to produce these documents in user-friendly formats. And inadequate capital convention of financial institutions. As you know, many of them are reluctant to give money to farmers because farming is a risky business. And when they do, they give it at a very high rate that it becomes almost impossible for farmers to repay. There is evidence in the studies that the maximum rate at which a loan should be given to a farmer is 6% if they are to recoup any profits in their enterprise. That is the maximum ever if you are to give it. Of course, better if it is maybe 1 or 2. But I think you know what our commercial banks provide. So it looks like many of us may actually be working at a loss. So what are the plans in the public sector under which we are operating? We have a national agriculture policy with those 6 objectives that we are following in our engagements. We want to ensure household and national food and nutrition security for all Ugandans. We want to increase incomes of farming households, right through crops, livestock, fisheries, and all other agriculture-related activities. We want to promote specialization in strategic, profitable, and viable enterprises and value addition. This focus has been recommended to be under what we call agricultural zones. It is basically to take advantage of competitive and comparative advantages of specific enterprises per zones by virtue of maybe the climate or the soils or whatever may be pertaining in that area. But it does not restrict engagement. 4, promote domestic, regional and international trade in agricultural products. Ensure sustainable use and management of agricultural resources, and of course developing our human capacity for agricultural development. We have what we call the ASP. This is the Agriculture Sector Strategic Plan, which is operationalizing the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program of the AU. So the document that we are using to develop our agriculture as per Africa sentiments is the ASP. And it has 4 main focus areas: production and productivity, markets and value addition, enabling environment, and institutional strengthening. So whatever we do, we shall be focusing on those 4 areas. The zones I talked about, it has been proposed that this country be divided into 10 agricultural zones that are depicted here. I want to give an example. Like for beef, we are proposing it happens in zones 1, 7, and 8. 1, 7, and 8. These zones have been studied, and as I said, by virtue of their conditions, there is evidence that beef can do well there. Dairy cattle, 6, 8, and 10. Where is 6, 8, and 10? Those are areas where, comparatively, dairy cattle will do very well. But as I said earlier, we are not saying you can't do dairy in any other part of what? The country. You can carry that environment that is good for dairy cattle in Karamoja. So we are not going to stop you from doing your dairy in Karamoja. That's basically what it means. But we are saying by studying these regions, we are proposing that those commodities can do best in those regions. Poultry, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's what it means. And you can always get access to these zones if you are interested. But you can always create your own environment, as I said, and you produce. So under the enabling environment, which we are supposed to create in order for you to do the work you're supposed to do, we want to first popularize the laws and standards, the ones we are talking about earlier, and enforce their use. We want to make you love them, but also enforce them, because we are not short of them. The biggest challenge we have in most of the cases is to enforce them. And then we want to fast track development, and of course reviewing those that may be outdated. Some of them are quite old, of the 50s and 60s. So we need to update them to match with the current technological, social issues that are coming up. And some of those that are specific and we are currently working on and are pertinent to the animal industry are those that I have mentioned there, but it's not exhaustive, there are several others. For example, the Meat Industry Development Bill, we have a policy in place of 2003, but we've never got a law. So we are pushing that very fast. Finalizing regulations for operationalizing the Animal Breeding Act, which we do have of also 2001, but we need to put in place the regulations that will enable us to have it effected. Animal Feeds Bill, we have a policy of 2005. For a long time, the bill has never come up because of several challenges. Good enough for that one. Cabinet has allowed us to go ahead and have it legally drafted. So right now it's under Ministry of Justice for legal drafting. We'll finally come to you for its validation. So don't you worry. Those who have opportunity, you'll also have to input into it. We also are working on having a law on livestock identification and traceability. Many times our products, when they get out, especially in case there is an issue, they will need to trace them back to their farm, their origin. But if we don't have our animals well identified, we can't trace back our products. So we are also working fast on that one. And of course, we need to strengthen the coordination and management of agriculture sector statistical systems. For those of you who've been trying to get data on various things in the agriculture sector, I think you can appreciate the problem we have there. You go to UBOS, they are saying something else. You may come to MAIF, we have another figure. Go to FAO, they have another figure. And if somebody does not quote the source of their information, you really get very confused. So we've put in place a system where we are going to capture data using the tools we have developed for the different commodities right from the parish level, so that it is regularly updated and it is sent to a central database in the ministry. Strategically, we want to change our focus from the current perspective of low input, low output systems, so that our farmers are more market oriented, making farming as a business. That is one of that is our mission as a ministry. We want to commercialize agriculture and of course the animal industry, and then of course guaranteeing sustainable production of great slaughter stock. The other strategic focus is animal feeds and forage security enhancement. We've made feeds one of our strategic areas of focus in the next 5 years and subsequently. So we want to increase on the quantity and quality of pastures and forages, including their utilization and conserving them, because I think that is a major challenge. We are not short of these feeds and forage, but we relax when it's raining and we cry when there is drought. We cannot afford that. So we want to encourage even investors who can come into that area, and we shall discuss the challenges they have. I know there is a challenge of storage. They will tell us about the grains and the other ingredients they use in feeds production. So we need a good discussion on that, so that because feeds form a major part of production. About 60% of the costs you put into any enterprise go to feeds. So you go wrong in feeds, you almost cannot get profit at the end. And of course, water is also food for the animals. So water availability is an issue. I think you've seen cases where animals are actually dying recently in some areas of the country where there is drought. So we can't afford to waste water anymore, just like Madam Victoria was saying. We need to start conserving the water. We waste a lot of it. So we need technologies for that. So I want now to go specifically to the various enterprises that you'll have an opportunity to further discuss in the breakout sessions. But this is just an overview, a brief on each one of them, and you can build on them further. In the meat, generally the meat, we have various meats. The achievements we've had is provision of an enabling environment and data collection for the meat sector. There has been enhancing beef, cattle, goat and poultry production and productivity, and meat hygiene services and marketing infrastructure. We've had efforts in that direction. But now specifically for beef, what are we doing? We are establishing holding grounds and quarantine stations. We are anticipating to do that in about 6 places that are under government control. Already in Katonga, that is Gomba district, and Chankwanzi at the National sheep center. We've finalized the infrastructure development. Water facilities, the holding grounds, they've been paddocked, and pastures are being developed. Offices are in place specifically to hold animals in a uniform way, so that at any one particular time we can pass out a good number of animals to go to the abattoirs that have been set up by the private sector. Like the one in Bombo, you may know it, and we have like 2 others in Chiruvura and Nakasongola. So these animals will be going to those abattoirs and specifically targeting the export market, because we've realized that we cannot just rely on available animals from individual farmers. They cannot sustain the tenders or contracts that we may draw with people who are interested in buying our meat. So that is going to be specifically for that purpose. We are going to fatten the animals and send them to the export abattoirs. We've initiated the establishment of disease control zones from which these disease-free animals will be harvested to go to these holding centers. So we are in the process of doing that. And I want to acknowledge funding from EU. That is a project we are having in the ministry that is specifically helping us on that one. Research is ongoing for various vaccines for the various diseases that are preventing us from especially exporting beef, like FMD and ECF. A lot of research is going on under NARO to see how we can address that, because we are increasingly spending a lot of money by buying our vaccines from outside. It becomes very expensive. So we want to increase our own capacity within the country to produce those vaccines. However, there are challenges: poor breeding stock, the diseases, and feed. And that is not restricted to only beef. I think it cuts across most of the other enterprises. So essentially that leads to low production and productivity. Poor regulatory framework, and this involves things like standards and certification. Standards of the meat, we need to grade it. We don't simply send poor quality meat outside. Movement control is a giant challenge to us. It is the cause of most of the diseases that are rampant in the country. And meat hygiene services, for those of you who have had an opportunity to move, for example, in Nakasero market, I think you can acknowledge how our meat is being handled, the chicken. So that is a big challenge, and we need to address it. Underdeveloped processing and value addition is a big challenge when you talk about beef. So what are the plans we want there? We want, first of all, to improve the genetics, fast maturing animals that can reach export weight by 18 months. 2 years, we sell them off. Most of the markets, the lucrative markets, would not wish to have animals that are beyond 3 years old. So that is where I want to go. Increasing investment in disease control, of course, promoting processing facilities for value addition. We want to build the capacity of all the stakeholders, right from producers through the processors, marketeers, transporters. I think you see them transporting our stock. So we are going to build capacity of all input dealers and everybody. And of course, researching into the alternative feeds and characterizing our own breeds. We want to develop our own breeds and exploit their own inherent attributes that may be good. For example, because of the challenge of the diseases, we'd rather have an animal that can withstand, for example, the tick challenge. And we find that most of the animals we've been bringing in, they are from out and they don't even know what ticks is all about. So they will succumb to the diseases. So why not exploit our own, get out that attribute, multiply it, and have our own breed. You know, there is an Entebbe dairy training school where players in the value chain are being trained to make these yogurts and cheese and whatever. So you can take advantage of it. The authority has rehabilitated and equipped several milk collection centers in the country, and others are coming on board. We are promoting the use and distribution of food grade handling equipment, utensils, made of stainless steel and aluminium. NADS has been providing a lot of that equipment to farmers. So that still continues. But they too have challenges. Inadequate public investment. They don't get enough money from the public sector. So we'll have to depend a lot on your input. Institutional coordination and linkages of the various sectors that have something to play in dairy. They need to be coordinated so that we speak the same language. For example, as they promote that don't sell raw milk because of hygiene issues, then somebody else says, why not let them sell? So those challenges become very, very critical and cannot lead us to where we want to go. Inadequate numbers and low skill levels of staff and other value chain actors. We need to skill them, for example, in product diversification and how to process them. Weak information and management system and the regulations so that we do what is right. The plans for the sector include strengthening dairy production and productivity, increasing dairy marketing and value addition. We want to focus on the marketing segment because many times we've talked to farmers, they say, why should they invest, for example, in making hay or silage, when at the end of the day, when the milk comes out, it will always sell at the same price. It doesn't make sense, and however much you talk as a vet, they'll listen and walk away, but they won't do it. So it's not that we have not trained, but they don't see value in it. So once the market segment is developed, we think that production will automatically increase. Institutional capacity strengthening and of course extension services and vet services will have to be improved. And we also are thinking about setting up a dairy development fund because you realized one of the challenges was inadequate public sector investment. So if there is a fund, then that fund can always be put to use when there is a shortage of funding. For the pigs, there has been a lot of improved husbandry through skilling extension workers and farmers by various organizations like the International Livestock Research Institute. Improved market access through formation of farmers cooperatives. Those who are coming from Hoima, Masaka, I think you are aware of the work that IRI is doing there. Because when they are under those associations, they can at least bargain for a good market. Improving value addition and processing is happening also, and research into the pig diseases that are rampant, the swine fevers, tapeworms, and the rest of that. They too have challenges like modern processing plants are not yet set up. For those of you who know Ambis in Narukolongo, you know what it looks like. So we need better facilities than that. Poor quality of feeds on the market is still not being addressed. We all think pigs eat anything. So you simply go feeding maybe amounts, but not quality. Then need to increase positive reporting. We've seen negative reports in the media many times that take people off the pork, and quality stock is also a problem, so we need to do a bit more breeding for stock for pigs. The plans is to focus on the diseases to see how we can get rid of them, but I want to ensure to bring to your attention here that the biggest challenge, especially of swine fever, is much to do with management, which most of us don't really care about. And it can be handled. Even the tapeworm, the nature of our feeding of our pigs that I told you about. So feeds research and production is another area we are going to focus on in pigs. We want to set up pig business hubs to improve market linkages. pig multi-stakeholder platforms, which we hope eventually are going to come out of this at the end of these meetings to see how to put them forward. Increasing the slaughter facilities and increasing breeding centers, and these are areas where the private sector can really engage with the public sector and will take it forward. Poultry. There has been support to establishment of breeder farms for supply of day-old chicks, and I want to applaud the private sector in this area. They've invested a lot of money in this area. Capacity building along the poultry value chain is happening, and many of those investors are actually doing this capacity building for the farmers who are outgrowers that they are working with. Provision of equipment such as hatchery equipment and generators through the NAT system has been happening, and the increasing investments in poultry processing is also there. I know one of the investors has I think the only known poultry processing facility we have in the country. Challenges they too have is a short supply of day-old chicks. We always have a shortage there, so we spend a lot of foreign exchange in bringing in day-old chicks, so it becomes expensive and irregular. Poultry feeds, the quality of feeds, full of chalk, burnt tires, sawdust. That is the kind of feeds we have on the market. Diseases is common also, and we have few trained, knowledgeable and skilled extension workers. And dumping of poultry products. Once in a while we get them coming in from outside, which is not very conducive to our own farmers. This is something we may need to talk about. So what are the plans we have? We want to build technical and financial capacity of the poultry and related industries so as to increase the production of especially the day-old chicks. So we minimize importation. We want to introduce farming technologies to the rural sector as well. This is an enterprise that can be done in any part of the country, especially the rural areas. So we want to provide them with technologies that can do that, and then improve on the standards and quality of poultry products in the market for not only local but also export. Aquaculture is another enterprise that we are talking about for today. It has continued to grow with cage farming coming in very seriously. We have EU funding us in another project in the ministry specifically, and it is doing a lot of work in aquaculture. We have another project that is setting up 2 aquaculture parks in Apache and in Kalangala. So these we can produce fish there in big quantities. The challenges they are facing is supply of the brood stock, that is the fingerlings they need as well. Lack of local manufacture of quality fish feeds, it's been a big challenge. Not many people have specialized in that. So you end up with expensive feeds coming from outside. Lack of local supply of quality cage materials and inputs. Inadequate supply of water and testing equipment, because they have to test the water to see that it is fit for the fish. We also have the fish farmers scattered, small scale and scattered, and it doesn't make economic sense when farmers are distributed in that fashion. And lack of handling facilities, especially the cold storage. As you know, fish is a perishable product. So the investment areas we are proposing here, which you can further deliberate on, is provision of the cage nets and materials, manufacture of the cage frames out of PVC materials, manufacture of the fish feeds, production of improved fish seed, the fingerlings, investment in production of table fish in cages and in aqua parks, and then provision of transport for the live fish. All those are virgin areas where we can further input and see how they can be developed. And of course, the capture fisheries, that may not be our point of discussion for today. Post-harvesting in fish can also be invested in, especially for the small fish. Value addition in aquaculture products, ready-to-eat fish products can come on board. Live fish marketing facilities in urban markets, they don't exist. You all know the nature of how we are selling the fish in the markets. Cold storage along the fish value chain, marketing and transportation, and packaging materials, of course, for the fish and fish products. And then our small animals, the bees. Those are the products currently that we know we are getting out of the bees. Many farmers are currently engaging in production of honey and other products. So honey, beeswax, propolis, bee pollen, royal jelly, and bee venom. Those in bold, the four, are the ones that we are currently producing in the country. The bee pollen and royal jelly, we are not currently there. Although those are very expensive products and would fetch us a lot of money. So they are still areas you can invest in and fetch a lot of money from them. Production is increasing in that area at those figures. Currently at 24,000 metric tons. That's where we stand on those products. And the annual levels for bees, propolis, and bee venom stand at 720 for beeswax, 500 liters for propolis, and only 1 kilogram. Huh? Annually for bee venom. It's very difficult to produce, so that is an area that we can still work on, us and private sector. So the issues here in apiculture, most of the honey we produce is actually consumed in the country. So we are not taking advantage of the export market, although it is increasing, but we are not exporting much. And from what I've been told, our honey is very good. But I think we are lacking improving on the quality of what we are taking outside. And it is very surprising that it fetches the least market price in the domestic market, majorly because of those issues. So we need to improve. So this is what we can still do in that area. Possible areas of investment, making standardized beehives, production and trading in high-value beehives, making packaging materials, and manufacturing protective wear, to mention but a few. So in conclusion, this is really summing up what has been highlighted under the different commodities. Some of the issues we want to critically look on for investment is the establishment of abattoirs, slaughter houses, and other slaughter facilities, and hides and skin stores. Hides and skins are fetching us quite a lot of money in the export market, although we don't do a lot of value addition to the final stage of producing leather, much as our hide is known to be a very good hide. Investment in appropriate vehicles, safe for transportation of the different species of animals. We have the specifications in the ministry, but we are not involved in direct manufacture of those vehicles. That is private sector. So that is an area where you can invest. For us, we will provide you with the specifications, but government cannot directly engage in that. We can only provide you with maybe a prototype, and that's it. Investment in processing facilities for animal products, targeting, of course, markets that fetch us a premium. We need to invest in the inputs, because without inputs, we are not going to produce feeds, seeds, The stock itself, that is the genetics, drugs manufacturing, farm implements, production technologies, all those are inputs. So investment is still required there. We can invest in feedlot establishment. So we fatten the animals, big numbers, all at the same time, so they can get out and we satisfy the contracts or tenders that we may get from those who want to import our meat. We need to invest in researching for vaccines we require and develop the vaccines and produce them. We need laboratories to be able to test and ascertain that this is what we are dealing with. We have some labs that are under government, the main one in Entebbe, and about 6 other regional ones, but many times they are not very well equipped. The reagents that they need to operate sometimes are not there because of the poor funding we talked about. So that is an area for investment. Funding of research. The research in animal is not comparable to that what is happening in crops. So very little money provided there. Most of the cases students do research to justify their own interests for PhDs and master's degrees, or basing on whoever has funded them their interests. So if we are going to address our research gaps, we need to take special interest in funding that research and link up with the research institutions so that we articulate the research gaps that we need them to work on. But we need to watch out as we do all this, as we want to develop our animal industry. There are things we have to take special note of. Otherwise, they will prevent us from moving forward. Increasing urbanization, meaning many people are coming out of the rural areas where production is usually best. So somebody has to stay there and produce. Livestock intensification, because of limited space and competition with other sectors. The population is growing, the land is not growing. We are apportioning it